Hi guys, Asmo here, and in this video I've got some crazy stuff for you. I'm bringing back the Build Roulette. For those of you who don't know, Build Roulette is a random build generator that lets you combine a completely random skill with a random ascendancy. And the challenge is to take this build to the end game and see how far you can get with it. Originally, I made it to prove a point that you can play whatever build you want in Path of Exile and do most of the content. Because a lot of people, and especially beginners, very often have this wrong idea that they cannot progress because of their build choice. And this is completely false. Unless you're trying to be competitive and participate in races or efficiently optimize your build for specific goals, your build does not matter nearly as much as you think. And the more important aspect is how well you make your character. So for this challenge, I'm going to randomize my build, and the goals for it are level the build to high 90s through mapping, complete a T17 map, and kill the regular endgame bosses like the Maven or Eater of Worlds. I'm going to invest into the character as much as I would for any other build, but I'm not going to use a Mage Blood or any crazy mirror tier gear, so I'm going to keep it pretty achievable even if I spend extra currency on it. And by the way, if you want to try the Build Roulette yourself, I put it on my new website. That's right, I've got a website now. You can go to asmology.com and get your own random build idea, or check out any of the guides on the website. This is going to be a hub for all of my written guides as well as some of the most important video guides. But now for the moment of truth. What skill and ascendancy am I going to get? This could be very anticlimactic if I get like a Detonate Dead Inquisitor or something. All right. Frozen Legion is one of the worst clunky skills I could have gotten. And a Saboteur. Okay, this is one spicy meme. If you're not familiar with it, Frozen Legion is an elemental attack skill, something that you would never willingly play as a Saboteur. This is a complete and utter garbage combination that has no right existing as a build, much less do the endgame content. But I'm going to do it anyway. Step one is to make a PoB. I've spent some time playing with different options, but I decided to focus a little bit on damage and cooldown recovery. I'm going to explain all of my choices and tell you exactly how I made it work after the gameplay showcase. Step two was to level the character. I started with Frost Blades because we're going to be using a Fizz to Cold conversion skill later, so it's a natural fit for leveling. And with some good leveling gear, it's very fast and comfy to run through the first part of the campaign. I played with it until the first lab because Frozen Legion has a level 34 requirement. And from the first lab I took the cooldown recovery ascendancy passive. This is actually one of the redeeming aspects of being a Saboteur. By having a lower cooldown we can use our skill a little bit more often, and I've also decided that I'm going to be exclusively using Frozen Legion for my damage. A lot of people that use this skill combine it with other abilities so that they can deal with the downtime, but I'm going to deal damage only with Frozen Legion, no cheating with extra skills, and we're going to strictly adhere to the Build Roulette results. At level 34 I swapped to Frozen Legion and equipped the Reaper's Pursuit. This axe gave me even more movement speed, good damage, and hits cannot be evaded, making it perfect for leveling. The damage was okay, the speed was good because of the leveling gear, and I cruised that way to level 57. And at 57 I was able to equip Marohi Erki, which is our endgame weapon. Because Frozen Legion is a cooldown based skill, doesn't really care about attack speed, so this weapon is a perfect fit. I got a few more levels and then decided to craft and buy all of my endgame gear that I had previously planned in the PoB, and then it was time for the endgame. As you can see, we did it. The most ridiculous randomized build can be played in Path of Exile's endgame content if you put some effort into making the character. Now, is it a great build? Hell no. I don't recommend anyone play this. The skill is very difficult to build around. The coverage is pretty bad. Mechanically, it's one of the worst skills in the game because it's simultaneously delayed damage and also has no lingering effect. So the clear is not comfortable. It also requires you to be on top of the boss to maximize your damage, which forces you to build more tanky or to die as a consequence of being more squishy. And we had to play a ridiculous ascendancy for it. Frozen Legion also doesn't work with most mechanics. You cannot leech, you cannot get life on hit, you cannot get most on hit effects. It doesn't work with on kill effects, but at the same time, it's also not a minion, trap, or a totem, so you don't have an extra avenue of scaling it, and it doesn't scale with attack or cast speed. So how the hell did I make it work? Let me go over the gems, items, and passives and explain the build now. For the main gem setup, we have the Frozen Legion, level 21 quality. I ran the temples myself to get a 21 with extra quality because I needed that 1% of extra quality for the cooldown reduction to push me to the next breakpoint so that I was able to have a little bit of a shorter cooldown. 0.36, so roughly 3 times per second, we get an extra charge of this. We're running increased critical damage because we are capping our crit, 100% crit, so we get extra crit multi. We're using Pulverize because, again, the less attack speed penalty does not do anything for us, so we simply have more melee area damage and also increased area effect, which is very important for this skill to get better overlaps. Then we also have Awakened melee physical damage. This can give me Intimidate as well as the less attack speed modifier that we are basically bypassing. Then we have elemental damage with attacks, also the Awakened one, as well as Awakened Cold Penetration, which also allows us to inflict exposure. Now, some of these things might work or might not work. It's very difficult to tell. Like this, for example, this exposure should work because this says skills have chance to inflict exposure on hit, not you have chance to inflict exposure on hit. Because if it said you had chance to inflict exposure or you inflict exposure whenever you hit or anything like that, then it probably wouldn't work. But whenever it says the skill has a chance to do something, then it should work. So that's why we are running this. For the chest, we have here Socketed Enlighten, which gets an extra level from the corruption. The Farrell's Fur actually was pretty cheap. It's not a very popular chest, but I needed to use Farrell's Fur for a very specific reason that I'm going to explain in a moment. But let's first talk about the gems. So we got the Enlighten with Hatred, which is the main damage aura. We're doing huge physical hit, and we're scaling the cold damage is fully converted to cold, so we're getting this Fizz as cold and increasing the cold. The Hatred gives me a huge amount of damage. Then we have Herald of Purity, again, just more physical damage multiplier, Grace for some defense, Precision to cap my accuracy and get extra crit, and Blood and Sand for either extra AoE or extra area damage. The next setup we have here is Immortal Call with cast when damage taken. We get multiple ways of getting endurance charges. One way is through the Enduring Composure, and another way is through having automated Enduring Cry with Call to Arms. So we got Call to Arms that's automated. I can turn it on, and you can see because we have a lot of cooldown reduction, this is pretty quick. So very often we get this heal. This is how we are actually relying, like, oh, this is how we're getting our sustain for the most part through this, a little bit of regeneration and the flask. So this is actually very important. And then also we have less duration support linked. The reason why I have less duration support here is for the aspect of the cat. So aspect of the cat is on these gloves, and because of that it's shorter, so it's a quicker cycle. That means we can get our frenzy charges and power charges in with less of a downtime if I'm spending them, and I am spending them for the phase run. So here I have phase run with increased duration, and this actually gives me a lot of damage because phase run, a lot of people don't use it for damage because it's not very practical, but for this skill it actually works. So it's 31% more melee physical damage, and because I have a lot of frenzy charges when I consume it, the duration is increased. I have it increased duration also linked with it, and that means that the secondary effect that I get is also long. So as you can see, this is the first effect, the primary effect, and then when I use my skill I have a secondary effect that lasts for a couple of seconds, which is long enough to get my Frozen Legion attacks to go off, so I can actually benefit from the damage bonus for the phase run to all of my attacks, like 6 attacks at the same time. So that's why it's very, very strong. Then we also have Ancestral War Chief with the Val version for the extra damage, as well as Assassin's Mark just for debuffing the bosses. Enhance is linked here with Life Tap, Call to Arms, and Enduring Cry for some extra cooldown recovery, and that covers all of the gems. Now let's talk about the gear. Most important thing, the weapon, Morohi Erki. I made a few of them myself. I ran temples and I corrupted some, but I managed to get some really good stuff. But eventually I ended up with this one that I bought from trade with the inspiration. Even though I got some really good ones, like 20% increased physical damage, endurance charges, with like max roll, with 8% explicit, 29 quality. I made these two myself. I ran the temples and I got some really good stuff. However, this is still better, because even though if you increase the base, it's very nice for you, but the inspiration gives you extra crit and extra multiplier, as well as reducing the cost. So it's just like a triple whammy. Like, it's really, really powerful, and that's why we're using this. So inspiration, by far the best corruption you can get on this. Very, very strong. Then Farul's Fur. So because this skill is so fucking bad, it doesn't work with anything, like on hit anything. There's like almost no way we can get frenzy charges. We cannot get frenzy charges from Blood Rage. We don't get frenzy charges on kill. We don't get frenzy charges on hit. There's just like no way to get frenzy charges. And I wanted to have decent cast speed and attack speed, because without cast speed and attack speed, this would be just pretty bad. Like, with the extra cast speed, I can cast it pretty quickly. I can do some DPS, like a decent amount of DPS, and I can just keep spamming this as soon as I get the charge, right? So we can use it as an actual DPS skill because we have good enough cooldown recovery, but we need the cast speed. And also the attack speed is very helpful because this is a super slow weapon. So whenever we attack, these guys take a while to spin. And if they take too long, then, you know, monsters are hitting you and before you get to hit them. And when I hit them, I freeze them, so they cannot do shit. So I need to make sure that I hit them pretty quickly. So this actual like cast speed and attack speed from this is very, very helpful. And on top of that, we're also getting power charges for extra crit, and the frenzy charges give me just a damage multiplier, which is good in general. Not to mention the phase run synergy, right? So that's why this chest, very, very powerful. Aspect of the Cat also has now option for level 30. This is a free reservation with this chest, and the level 30 gives you just more crit, more attack speed, more cast speed, so it's very, very nice. The next thing I went for is Abysses. So Abysses is actually a huge damage multiplier for this skill. We get some flat damage, but mostly we get the melee critical strike multiplier, also increased effect of shock, which helps me, so we get extra, that's another multiplier, but we do take increased physical damage taken, which notoriously is something that kills a lot of builds. This build has the endurance charges and immortal call and multiple ways of generating endurance charges, also running Taste of Hate, and some armor, but besides that I don't really have any physical damage reduction. So this is the main part that makes my character squishy. I could go for something else, make myself tankier, but I wanted to go for more damage because it's just more fun that way. So that's why I went for the Abysses. Huge amount of damage. Another unique that we're running is the Ashes of the Stars. The quality on the gems is very useful for a lot of different gems, for things like Call to Arms and Enduring Cry. It gives me the cooldown recovery rate. For the phase run, it gives you more move speed, so I can actually run pretty quickly. This build has really nice movement speed, and also of course Frozen Legion gives me the cooldown recovery. This cooldown recovery is very, very nice, allows me to basically have more DPS. So this doesn't increase my like one hit, I'm not like one punch man completely, because I also have some DPS and some more clear and comfort for the build, because otherwise it would be pretty bad. So that's why I decided to go for the Ashes. It's actually not that bad in terms of the damage, looking at the PoB compared to other amulets that I could be using. The next unique we have is Polaric Devastation. Now, I actually don't know if this works, right? I'm just assuming this doesn't work by now, because like almost nothing works. The thing is, if the wording is specific, and if it works exactly the same way as everything else with that wording, then it probably doesn't work, because it says when you freeze them. So technically I don't freeze them, these entities freeze the enemies, right? So it probably doesn't work. The thing is, it's very hard to test because it doesn't really have an icon. I tried to hit the monster with like Glacial Hammer, look at the icon, I didn't see any icons, and then I hit with this, it's like I didn't see any difference. So I'm actually not sure if this works. probably doesn't, and it probably could be replaced for something better. The next couple of items that we have here are the belt and the boots, which both have cooldown recovery rate. So cooldown recovery rate is something you can get on these two slots, and it's very nice, of course, for everything we're doing. It's good for the focus, and it's good for the Frozen Legion. So the belt I bought, just simply the best belt I could get. I wanted to have life and increased elemental damage of attacks, some resistances, and the cooldown recovery. So that's what I simply just bought from trade. 20% cooldown recovery rate is the best you can get. It's a little bit harder to roll and make deterministically than the boots, because the boots you can do like an elevated mod and stuff like that. With this, you just have to roll it. And it's a little bit harder to craft this. The boots are actually a little bit easier to craft. So boots, I got Shaper Influence boots with fractured movement speed and fractured T1 res. And the cool thing is, pretty much no matter which res you get, you can probably craft them with the same method. So I did a Reforge Cold with Harvest, which guarantees, because we have already cold res on it, so it guarantees an influence modifier. So as long as I hit the cooldown recovery rate, I'm going to have guaranteed other influence modifier, so that I'm going to be able to elevate and go for 50-50, elevate the cooldown recovery, the other mod is gone. So that's how I did it. And I happened to naturally roll life on it, so I just crafted the avoid elemental ailments. If I didn't roll life and I had to get the life on a prefix from a craft or do it through a different way, like a reforge or something, then I would have locked the suffixes and did Reforge Cold again in order to force the chance to avoid elemental ailments on the suffix, because it will be an empty suffix, and then I would just craft the life. But I rolled a life and I only needed 25% chance to avoid elemental ailments. The way that we're getting ailment avoidance is through this jewel, Ancestral Vision, which gives me modifiers to suppress, also applied to chance to avoid elemental ailments. And the cool thing is, you can go above 100 suppression. So you don't get only 50% avoid elemental ailments, you can get 55, for example, right? So I got like a little bit over 100 spell suppression. That's why I got like this node here, because this gives me enough ailment avoidance, so that together with this 25% and the 20% from the thick skin, I'm actually getting over 100% chance to avoid elemental ailments. The extra 5% here comes from the 10% suppression on full life, right? So I'm actually like perfectly capped on 100%. So that's the boots. This is the belt, and then the other ring is just simply life and res and also elemental damage of attacks. And I wanted to have an empty suffix, so I bought the ring with that has like some resistances crafted on it, and I replaced the resistances for the shock on focus. So this is very nice because we are on top of a boss when we are using our skill anyway, so we can simply just press the focus and apply really nice shock. It's like 20-something% shock. It's very, very powerful mod to get, and just very, very easy to do. And then we have gloves. On gloves we have the extra suppression, which I need also to cap my ailments. We have the aspect of the cat, damage per frenzy charge, life, resistances. There's a temple mod here for increased damage with hits, and just crafted AoE +1 to AoE gems. And that's basically the setup when it comes to this part of the gear. Now we have the flasks. So for flasks, we're running Quicksilver with reduced effect of curses just for mapping, Taste of Hate just for mapping, and also just damage. It's just very, very good flask. Since we're doing like Fist converted to cold, this gives me maximum damage and also the survivability, which I really, really need because of the abysses. A Lion's Roar as well. And a Bottle Faith just for single target. So when I'm just on a boss, I just spam all the flasks and I just basically what you do is you place your totem, right? So I'm going to show you the combo that I did on all of the bosses to one-shot them, right? Like all the Conquerors and stuff like that. So you place your totem, you use Phase Run, you do all of the flask, boss appears, you curse, you shock, and then you use your skill, right? So that's the combo. It's very long, complicated combo. You have to press like 5 different buttons to maximize it, but that's basically how combo builds like that work. Now, let me go over the path of building, which has the passive skill tree, so that you can see basically what we have in here. So this says 24 million DPS. This is on like a Guardian Pinnacle boss config. This does not have 24 million DPS. This is when you have everything up, right? When you have all of the buffs and so on. Like I said, when you do this combo, you have about a 50 million burst, right? This is basically what it says. So it's like, this is not the actual DPS of the build. You have about 50 million burst, something like that. So let's look at the tree. For the tree, I went for, because we're on this side of the tree, right? So we're like, this is one of the other really bad things about having to play Saboteur for this challenge, is that we don't get access to any of these like juicy crit nodes. We don't have access to these like mace nodes, which are very, very powerful. You see this node itself, like 8.9% increased damage, very, very powerful stuff that I don't get to have. So one idea I had is to go here for this Unnatural Instinct, because this gives me cast speed, accuracy, movement speed, life, so that way, and also attack speed. So that way I can get like cast speed, attack speed, life, movement speed, just quality of life stuff, not that many points, right? And it also puts me here where I can get extra suppression, because I'm getting suppression here, I'm getting suppression here, and I'm getting suppression here. So lots of suppression on the tree, so that I don't have to have it on the gear. The next thing we went for is this Lethal Pride. So I needed to get some extra strength, because again, we're using a strength skill and we're on the right side of the tree, which is just terrible. So we need the extra strength, and Lethal Pride is a pretty efficient way to do it, especially when you're picking a lot of notables in the same area. So here we're picking the life, we're picking this physical damage, movement speed, and let's see what we have on this. We have 4% increased maximum life. We have regen, also very, very useful. This build needs extra recovery. We have crit multi, we have double damage, we have physical damage taken as fire. That's another defense for our like shitty fizz defense. Then we have melee critical strike chance. Stun threshold doesn't matter. Warcry buff effect just slightly increases our survivability, and then we have strength here, and that's basically it. There's also like melee crit multi if I wanted to go for like this recovery, but this is a very, very nice note. Oh, also we have here increased melee damage for these nodes, because we are using the mark for single target. Other than that, I went for cluster jewels. So in order to try to get a little bit of a better clear, I went for the explode. Which one? This one or this one? Yeah. Enemies killed with attack hits have 15% chance to explode, and this actually works. So because it doesn't say you, right? It's not enemies killed by you. Enemies killed with attack hits, and you do execute attack hits, right? Like it is attack hits that are gonna kill these things, not necessarily done by you, but attack hits nonetheless. So it actually does work. So we have the source of explode here for a little bit of extra clear. Weight advantage for extra strength, double damage is very, very powerful node. And I have basically that on both of these. And here we got Forbidden Jewels, where I went for the Swift Killer to get the Frenzy Charges, Frenzy Duration. This works very well with our chests, right? And then for the Ascendancy points, there are actually points you can get that are moderately useful. So we have like a Clockwork, which is the cooldown recovery rate. This is pretty nice. This gives me DPS, not actual like one hit punch, but DPS for like recovery and for clear and stuff like that. We have the blind. This is a very good node in general. We have the explosives expert. This is why I have on one of my jewels, which I didn't show before, fire damage to attacks. We need some sorts of fire damage in order to basically inflict ignite to get the extra damage from that node. So I have damage, res, which fixes my res, corrupted blood immunity. So that's why this jewel has this. So explosive expert, we chill with our attack, we shock with our ring, and we burn things with the ignite that we inflict, because we crit almost all the time. Then we have the bomb specialist, which is 20% chance to deal 50% more area damage, as well as 20% chance to take 50% less area damage from hits, and that's basically it. When it comes to the rest of the things, we have Wind Dancer, we have some good jewels. I found this jewel for really cheap. It was, I think, like 5 div or something like that. And then I randomly synthesized it as well. I had some juice. I synthesized it. I hit cold damage, really cool jewel. Gives me a very large amount of damage, like 9% damage. And then I also found this Watcher's Eye that has precision as well as penetration with the hatred. I bought it also pretty cheap because it had really shitty rolls. And I just divided a couple of times until I got decent rolls, because the penetration is very, very powerful. So that's how we're getting a lot better damage than we would otherwise. Plus also, this is a very good node, Fangs of the Frost, as well as one with nature. But you can see the tree is mostly just spell suppression, life, some crit, a little bit of damage. It's fairly balanced, but again, the build is still pretty squishy. This is with Immortal Call up, so we're not that tanky. You can die on this build, but it is nonetheless very, very fun to play. I had a lot of fun. If you want to try and challenge yourself with the build roulette, you can find it at asmology.com along with my guides. Good luck and see you next time.